It is late at night, May 28, 1453. Inside the ancient walls of Constantinople, the air is thick with a strange silence. For over 1,000 years, this city was the center of the world, a beacon of civilization, the last living piece of the Roman Empire. But now it is an island in a hostile sea. Outside these walls, a different sound fills the night. The low murmur of an immense army. Over 80,000 men, an ocean of soldiers, ready for the final command. And in his tent, a young sultan, just 21 years old, dreams of destiny. His name is Mehmed II, and this city is his obsession. Tomorrow, these two worlds will collide. This isn't just a battle for a city. It's a battle for 1,000 years of history. It's the story of how the impossible became inevitable. This is the story of the last defense of Constantinople. To understand the end, we have to understand the beginning. By the mid-1400s, the great Byzantine Empire was a shadow of its former self. It was little more than the city itself and a few scattered territories. But what a city it was! Protected on 3 sides by water, and on the 4th, by the legendary Theodosian Walls. For centuries, these walls had stood against every enemy. They were a masterpiece of engineering, a triple line of defense that had broken armies and shattered the ambitions of would-be conquerors. To the people inside, the walls were more than stone and mortar. They were a promise from God, a symbol that their world would never fall. But a new world was rising, the Ottoman Empire, full of energy and power. And its new sultan, Mehmed II, was different. He was brilliant, ruthless, and had been taught since childhood that taking Constantinople was his sacred duty. He saw it not as an ending, but as a beginning for his own empire. Facing him was the last Roman emperor, Constantine XI Palaiologos. He was a good man, a soldier, burdened with an impossible task. He had only about 7,000 men to defend nearly 14 miles of walls. He begged the Christian kingdoms of Europe for help, but little came. He was almost entirely on his own. Mehmed knew the walls were strong, so he brought something new, something monstrous. He hired a Hungarian engineer named Orban to build him the largest cannons the world had ever seen. These weren't just weapons. They were psychological tools, firing massive stone balls that could turn ancient stone to dust. On April 6, 1453, the siege began. The great guns opened fire. The sound was deafening. The ground shook. For the defenders, it must have felt like the end of the world. Each blast chipped away not just at the walls, but at their hope. But the defenders were resilient. Every night, men, women, and children would work under the cover of darkness. They used rubble, wood, and earth to patch the holes in their ancient walls. They were outnumbered more than 10 to 1, but they refused to break. A key figure in this defense was a professional soldier from Genoa, a man named Giovanni Giustiniani Longo. He arrived with just 700 men, but he was an expert in siege warfare. Emperor Constantine placed him in charge of the land walls, and his courage and skill inspired everyone. For a while, it seemed like they might just hold on. But Mehmed was a master of strategy. The city's harbor, the Golden Horn, was protected by a massive iron chain. No enemy ship could get in. It was the city's safe side. So, Mehmed decided to do the unthinkable. He would not go through the water. He would go over the land. In a single night, his men greased thousands of logs and physically dragged 70 of his ships over a hill and into the harbor. Imagine the terror of the defenders waking up one morning to see an enemy fleet suddenly floating in their safe harbor. It was a stroke of genius that opened up a whole new front in the battle. The city was now completely surrounded. Weeks turned into a month. The constant bombardment, the lack of food, the sheer exhaustion, it was taking a toll. Small cracks began to appear, not just in the walls, but between the people. The old mistrust between the Greek Orthodox defenders and the Catholic Latins who had come to help began to surface. Yet they held. They fought off several direct assaults. They even won a small but crucial naval battle, sinking Ottoman ships right in front of the Sultan. For every moment of despair, there was a small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, a relief fleet from Venice or a miracle from God was on its way. Mehmed grew impatient. He sent an envoy with a final offer: surrender the city, and the people would be spared. The emperor could leave with his treasures and be given governance of a different land. Constantine's reply would echo through history. He said, "To surrender the city to you is not for me to decide. We have all decided to die of our own free will, and we will not consider our lives." The choice was made. There would be no surrender. As the final days approached, strange signs appeared in the sky. A thick, unexplainable fog covered the city for days. A lunar eclipse fulfilled a dark prophecy that the city would fall when the moon was dark. For the deeply religious people inside, it felt like God had abandoned them. On the evening of May 28th, the night before the final assault, something beautiful happened. Emperor Constantine went to the great church of Hagia Sophia, and there, enemies put aside their differences. Orthodox Greeks and Catholic Latins, who had argued for centuries, took communion together. They prayed as one people, knowing it was likely the last time they would. The emperor walked the walls one last time that night, speaking to his soldiers, giving them courage. He was no longer just an emperor. He was a father, preparing his family for the end. Just after midnight on May 29th, the attack began. A wave of sound and violence crashed against the walls. Mehmed sent his best troops, the elite janissaries, in a final, overwhelming push. The fighting was brutal, hand-to-hand in the darkness. For hours, the defenders held. But then, disaster struck. Giustiniani, the brave Genoese commander, was badly wounded. His men carried him away from the walls, and seeing their leader fall, the remaining defenders began to lose heart. At the same moment, a small gate, the Kirkoporta, was discovered to be unlocked. Ottoman soldiers poured through. Someone shouted, "The city is taken!" Panic spread. The lines of defense crumbled. Emperor Constantine knew the end had come. He tore off his royal insignia, so he would be just another soldier, and plunged into the thick of the fighting, last seen swinging his sword near the breach. He died with his empire. The Ottoman flags were raised over the ancient walls. The Roman Empire, a legacy that had stretched for 2,000 years, from Augustus Caesar to Constantine XI, was over. The city fell into a period of chaos, as was the custom of war. But when Sultan Mehmed finally rode into the city, he was said to have been moved to tears by the silent, broken beauty of what he had conquered. He went to the Hagia Sophia, the grandest church in Christendom, and ordered it converted into a mosque. It was a powerful symbol. One world had ended, and another had begun. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves through Europe. It marked the end of the Middle Ages and pushed Europe into the age of exploration, as new trade routes were needed to the east. It is a story of endings, but it is also a story of incredible courage, of a handful of people standing against an unstoppable force, defending their world to the very last breath. A final, defiant stand that history will never forget.